King is dead. Wouldn't really have much of a reaction here. Which king? What if I came in and said, the queen is dead? You might actually think of certain queens, but again, it's kind of like, oh, well, that's disappointing. Sad to hear. Maybe if I start off saying, the president is dead. Some people would probably like, yay! Sick, because this is still human life we're talking about, but the reaction probably still wouldn't be quite as connective. My name is Jason. I get to know about probably half of you here. I get to be on that back wall under the Sent category. Left here some time ago, planting a church in Cincinnati. And Ricky asked me to come out and preach this morning. A return visit, as Jonathan pointed out. It's good. Yeah, it's a return visit. Actually, we'll bring that up. But we have a hard time connecting with some things. They're foreign concepts to us. We hear phrases like that, and it's not going to have the same meaning to us as it might have had in the past. Maybe if we were to say something like, a mother is dead, that would start welling up some feeling within us. If we knew that mother even, at least we're going to be offer some consolation and feel bad for the person involved. But that doesn't bring up an overwhelming response in our own people together. Here, perhaps if we said something like, Ricky is dead, that'd get a shock value and would be a response in the room. Of course, there'd still probably be some people celebrate. But here, we would be joined together in mourning that. You see, what I want us to understand from the very beginning here and what we look at today is this idea of pain and recognizing what it is Jesus knows about what we experience, what he understands. Because when it comes to pain, we often kind of lose our minds and our rationality. Understandably, emotions take over, and questions begin to well up. And quite commonly, the question of, God, do you even care, will surface. Do you even know what I'm going through? Does that even matter to you? Now, I'm using particularly loss as I bring this up, but that question doesn't get limited to losses. That question comes up when we face struggles of all kinds, when we face uncertainties and our future is clouded and everything we plan for is thrown aside, and we think, God, do you even care? Why would you allow me to go through this? Must be because you don't understand what this pain is like. Or loss, or uncertainties, or if, sorry, I'm struggling with some of my words. Conflict comes in, and those we care about most come against us. This question will well them up. And I wanted us to look at a passage where Jesus has to deal with these and how he responds to it. And unfortunately, in our tendency to take the Bible in bits of stories, we lose sometimes the greater theme of what's going on and how Jesus deals with things on a larger scale. And now he shows us not only how much he has experienced what we experience, but how much he responds in a compassionate tone and cares for us, and just as Heath just sang about, truly loves us. Not just in concept and idea, but actually took the steps proving it. This is history. Not stories to encourage, but history of what God did in and for us. That can allow us to be encouraged, to walk stronger, to face each and every day in a way that doesn't make sense to the world around us. Confounds even the wisest and think, that is not rational. Yet, how does it keep happening in your life? So today I want to give two sides. One is an encouragement of how Jesus deals with the very worst of pains that we know, and how Jesus shows his compassion in that, so that we can leave out of here even more excited about the God we serve and his involvement in our lives. Sound good? Yeah, we can go with that. Sure. Let's dive in. I'm going to be in Matthew 14, so you can turn there, but I got to be honest, I'm going to jump around a bit from where I'm drawing from, because what we look at is so big that it is actually in each of the four Gospels that it cannot be said about much outside of the cross. The writers of the Gospels come in, and they are telling different accounts of Jesus' life, not differing stories, but different aspects. Not all of them talk about his birth. Not all of them talk about his childhood. In fact, very few talk about that. They give us different aspects to understand, because as they write to different people, they want us to understand different aspects. And so I'm going to largely draw out of Matthew 14. I'll draw you there. But we're going to look at a story that encompasses more than that. It was last week when I was here. Not last week, I'm sorry. I forgot the number of weeks. A few weeks ago when I was here, we talked about, does anybody remember? Quiz time. Remember, I was a youth pastor here, so I was used to people talking back. What did we talk about last time? Who, at least? You remember? See, now I put you on the spot, and you got to remind me that you paid attention. I'm just kidding. It's been a few weeks, so that's a struggle. Anybody? Nobody? Oh, it hurts. Looking up notes. See, that will encourage me, even if it takes a moment to remember what it is. Thank you, Tweety. That's awesome. But I'll give you a leg up. We talked about John the Baptist. And Don's, and oh yeah, I remember some of that. Don's even pull up the passage. I remember where we were. We talked about John the Baptist, and it was a tough time in John the Baptist's life. This is the man who had came in and had been going out into the world and proclaiming the coming of the Christ. And he had been drawing people back to God. And here we saw that he winds up in prison. Seems to happen a lot in the Bible. But in this case, this is where his story is ending. And he's struggling with faith. And he even writes to or sends his disciples to Jesus asking, is it worth it? Essentially, that's what he's asking. Did I do something worthwhile? Are you really the person that we thought you were? And Jesus answers in, well, the way Jesus does, indirectly, but even more directly than we recognize. He says, look what's happening. The prophecies are being fulfilled. Exactly who you said I was, who you're expecting. And then the story moves on. We get to Jesus. He gathers his disciples. He pairs them up and he sends them out. He's sending them out into villages all across the area around Galilee. He's having them teach the people. He's having them call the people. He's even allowing them to begin healing as he does. And it's an amazing fire that starts burning around the culture, around the countryside, and amazing things are happening. And so the disciples are out and seeing these things, and they come back to share these stories, and that's where we pick up in Matthew. See, Matthew doesn't actually tell us that that was the time frame. Luke and Mark do. I'm in Matthew 14. We're also going to look at Luke 9, Mark 6, John 6, if you want to take those notes, because they tell a broad story that's taking place. The disciples have been out doing amazing works, and they come back, and tragedy has struck. Amongst this time of amazing things happening, a terrible thing has happened. Actually, a little more terrible than we can even grasp. But as the disciples come back, we'll pick up in John 14 and just read how he tells it to us in verse 9. He says, although the king regretted it, this is Herod, he commanded that it be granted because of those of his guests. John the Baptist's head must be brought before the king on a silver platter. Not metaphorically speaking, because that sounds easy to say nowadays. Bring me this on a silver platter, because that sounds grandiose, almost forgetting the grotesqueness of the occasion. John the Baptist has been imprisoned, and not only that, he's been imprisoned because he speaks against Herod the king, the man over the land, the authority. But Herod wants to marry Herodias. I would try to explain the Herods and their family matters, but it is more confusing than if you went out in the back country woods and tried to look up family trees. It doesn't make any sense. And John comes in speaking against it, saying, this isn't right. So John gets locked up. But Herod doesn't want him dead because he still enjoys hearing him speak on anything else. The wife, however, isn't too keen on a guy running around saying it's not legal, right, or proper. So she wants him dead. Herodias wants John dead. And Salome, her daughter from another marriage, goes and dances before Herod, and all gets really weird. because Herod likes it so much. He's like, I will offer you half of what I have. So much, just I'll say anything. She goes back to Herodias and says, what do I want? Like a good daughter. She says, I want John the Baptist's head, silver platter. So the king regrets it, but he commands that it is so. So he sent orders and had, verse 10, had John beheaded in the prison. His head was brought on a platter and given to the girl who carried it to her mother. This is the stuff of movies now, and this is what we call entertainment. How do I the gravity of what's just occurred? And trying to talk and think through this passage and how I would deal with this part, I thought of how I could maybe exemplify it, but it's not even right in our culture to even make an example of somebody else and try to compare that. It is so beyond us. I mean, for us, we hear about waterboarding where the feeling of drowning is simulated, and you're not even actually drowning or dying, and we go lose our minds on this. We can't imagine an occasion where our leader would order the death of a good man and his head brought and handed to a little girl, a young woman. What a disgusting occasion this is. To us, this is Braveheart or movies. To truly have that happen is beyond ours or to consider. Yet this is what happens to the Baptist, to the man who went out proclaiming the coming of Jesus. A gruesome, awful death. Then his disciples came, removed the corpse, buried it, and went and reported to Jesus. So here's where Jesus comes into the story. He has sent out his disciples, and his disciples are over the land doing these things, and then word comes to him about John. Just then, so do his disciples return. Maybe they've heard about it too. It's not really clear. But Jesus hears about this in verse 13. When Jesus heard about it, he withdraws from there by a boat to a remote place to be alone. Although he has his disciples with him. He withdraws with them. That Mark and Luke tells us. Now here's what's going on. Jesus is cousins of John. And here is his family. He just learned news that his family was brutally murdered unjustly because some woman danced and said that's what she wanted. That's going to hit hard. But here is Jesus who is ministering into this country with a man who's gone ahead proclaiming his coming and saying, he's coming, listen to him. He's coming. Get yourselves right so you can hear what he has to say. He's coming. You need to know this man. And here's Jesus, the guy going out, making him known, has been brutally murdered. Or another way to look at this is that Jesus has come into this world and emptied himself of everything. Paul says in Philippians that he emptied himself of all glory, which means he lives a dependent life as we do on the Father. And as he ministers, he now has others who are going ahead of him to prepare this mission. And Jesus has a friend, a family member who has ministered for him and for the people he's come here to reach, killed on his behalf. That's a lot of weight if you consider your place. That something you're doing, somebody is so excited for it, they go out and start helping you with it, and because of it, they're killed. This is Jesus. We think, oh, he's God. It's simple. He can handle anything. But this is Jesus who emptied himself of all glory to live as us, dependent on us, and faces the very same things we face. How are you going to handle a situation where someone so important to you is so brutally murdered? We'll lose our minds. We'll scream for justice. We'll scream, God, do you care? We'll scream, this isn't right. This is what Jesus faces here. How does he handle the worst of questions? God, do you even care? Let's not forget that Jesus lived as a man. He lived as us, and he faces the very same things we face. And that question has to hit him. It's like, but he's Jesus, he's God. He's not going to fail. You're right. He's not going to fail. But how does he handle it so he doesn't fail is the question. And what does he do? He removes himself to be alone with the Father. He takes his disciples with him. How does Jesus handle the worst of pains? by going to stand in God's presence and saying, I can't neglect you. I need to be with you. I need you in my life right now. Jesus withdraws regularly, right? We call it devotion time. He wants to spend time with God the Father. He wants to live in that perfect relationship just as it was in heaven. But now as a man, he does so. So this is a rare occasion that Jesus will remove himself from everybody. But he does so to handle the worst of situations, the greatest of godliness. Stand and be in the presence of God. Removed, dealing with the worst of questions. So far that sounds reasonable and logical, and that's what we would maybe even counsel each other, right? Just go and spend time with God and pray, or maybe have others around to console you and spend that time focused on Him. But that's not where the story ends. That was the setup to the story. John is dead. Jesus has to mourn the loss of somebody close to him. The disciples have to mourn the loss of somebody close to them. Remember, how did Andrew find out about Jesus? Because he was following John. And John said, look, there's the Son of God. And Andrew's like, what? I want to go find out who this guy is. Maybe another disciples too, because two left, Andrew and another. And so they're mourning, and all this is happening, and they go and withdraw, and what? Nothing more? It gets quiet? They heal and come back? That's where amazing starts to happen. That's where beautiful starts to happen. That's where we see how God can do and work incredible ways. Because the disciples went out, and they became a beacon for Jesus. Healing and stirring the people up to know. And word of John's death gets out. And Jesus isn't the only one to hear about it. Because in verse 13, this verse continues, when the crowds heard this, technically talking about Jesus leaving, but also they're there because they, one, hear about Jesus, and two, hear about John's death. When the crowds hear this, they followed him on foot from the towns. They went, as Jesus sails away of the Galilee, they're running along the shore to get to where he's going. And they watch the boat because they're saying, what's going on? He's healing everybody. He was, and he's dead. What do? We want to hear what this man has to say. So Jesus withdraws, and he's going to be alone, and he sets foot on shore, and there are the thousands of people waiting for him. It'd be fair to say the disciples go out and say, guys, Jesus is really hurting right now. So we just need to let him be. Send you all away. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you. Here's some complimentary figs on your way out, but we'll see you again next week. That sounds reasonable. Jesus, take a break. Rest. We're hurting too. Let's just gather together. We haven't seen each other for a while because we've all been out. Let's talk about the stories of what amazing things God did so we can heal. He saw a huge crowd after stepping on shore, and he felt compassion for them. Mark actually says, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. We take that with great theological impact, but think of the literal impact. John was the shepherd, and he's dead. They literally have lost their shepherd. They can't go to the Pharisees because the Pharisees are going to say, work for God. They can't go to the Romans because the Romans are going to say, get what you can get. The Greeks are going to be even worse. Just, hey, worship people because they are amazing creatures. So they're literally without a shepherd. And they've come to Jesus because they need a shepherd, and they know that there's something here. And Jesus gets out of the boat, and he sees the people longing for God's presence. And he says, I'm not leaving this. Because what do I need right now? I need to be where God is, the Father is moving. And that's where I am going to see the mission accomplished that I'm here for. Where is God at work? God just brought all the people right there so that a work can be done. But not just for work, because in our mind that means labor, that means earning pay, that means these things. God is moving here, and he has provided his Son and his Son's followers to mourn by being in his presence. Not quiet, but in miracle. Here is the opportunity to see God do miraculous. Where do I want to be when I'm hurting? I want to be right where God is doing something, because it reminds me that the pain is worth it, that the suffering, there's something greater, that I'm not limited to my really limited humanity. But God is doing incredible things. That's where I want to be when I'm hurting most. And Jesus steps out of the boat, and he sees his Father has prepared an opportunity, and he walks with it in compassion. Because when we ask, do you even care? Jesus' response has always been, yes. I have compassion. I care. And here in one of the worst of moments, here's the chance to show it. Not just because I'm going to get out, I'm going to talk with the people and teach them, which is what he does, because of what will even happen after that. Because by now, if you're looking at the passage, you know exactly the miracle that occurs. The only miracle in all four Gospels. He teaches, and then his well-meaning disciples step up and say, okay, Jesus, it's late. We need to push the people aside, because they've got to get food. So we're in the middle of nowhere. So we've got to send them out. Even the village is close to us. It's going to be hard for them to eat. They've got to go so they can get food. So Jesus, this is compassion. Send them away. Jesus says, there's no need to send them away. Feed them. What? You don't understand, Jesus. The towns here don't even have enough food. We've got to send them away. That would be my thinking in the moment. At one point I read this and I even thought, was this a moment that Jesus is saying, I'm tired and so I'm giving you the chance to minister? No. Jesus challenges here. He says, you feed them. He's quoting 1 Corinthians. That'd be funny. He's quoting 1 Kings 14, where Elijah had an occasion of some barley loaves of bread, where he feeds an army of 100. And the people are like, you can't feed them with this much. And he says, no, the Lord has ordained that they will eat and have their fill. And so they are fed, an army of 100 men with loaves of bread. Some other stuff. And if Elijah, who prayed for a double portion, Elijah says, let me do twice the blessings of what Elijah does. If that's incredible, here Jesus steps into the scene of 5,000 men gathered before him, and he has a few loaves of bread and 2 fish, and he feeds 5,000. He does 50 times of what the greatest prophet does. And you know that people can be stupid and forget, but these people don't. They've memorized the stories, and they remember exactly what happens, and their response is, he's a greater prophet. Jesus, hurting, facing the question that we face, God, do you even care, steps out of the boat and sees how God cares. He gives everybody the chance in the time of mourning to not only have the shepherd they need in Christ, but to see it personified that he is the truly greatest one to come among us. He is God incarnate. And this miracle takes place, and it explodes everybody's mind. Now I'm speaking metaphorically. 50 times what even Elijah did. Think of the greatest man in our history, and he would multiply it 50 times over in miraculous form. He has fed the 5,000 men. Of course, we always like to point out, well, there's women and children there too, right? So that we could extrapolate that if most of the men are married, then they have so many women, so that's like a 3/4 of that. And then they have children, maybe. I actually don't think there's very many there for a particular reason. But yes, he feeds more than the 5,000. But he feeds the 5,000 and reassures them that, John is dead, but there's greater things taking place now. God's presence hasn't left. Just one of his people. And all these people, in the worst of their pains, can stand in God's presence and see the miraculous take place. Why would 5,000 men, by the way, be here? Why not more women and children? Is it just because John's dead? Sort of, but John's dead, and now they're looking to see what Jesus is going to do. Because the fire spread, the beacon's lit. Here's somebody we need to see. He's doing the miraculous. John's dead. John pointed to him. So, all right, Jesus, what's it going to be? This miracle takes place. And their response, according to John, is they want to force him to be king now. this is it. This is the man. We're going to make him do what we want now. We still struggle to get it. We still miss it so often. The disciples did too. So the miracle's taking place, and Jesus sends his disciples away on a boat. So another miracle takes place. And he tells the people, no, that's not happening. And then actually does go and spend some time alone. He quells that and says that it's not happening as you want, as you expect, because there's something greater that has to take place. He's still working towards the cross. He's still working on not just leading us out of a moment where we can feel better about a death, or out of a moment where we can feel better about an oppressive regime that has crushed these people. But he's restoring all of humanity through all history through the cross. They can't fathom the miracle that's about to take place. Even now we look back and we can't fathom what Jesus did with that cross, that empty tomb. Some people can't even believe it, literally. There's no way that happened. Yet in this moment, in this small story, we see this inkling of the compassion Jesus has for us. Don't miss of the pain that he felt with us too. And how does Jesus react in compassion? See, there's our challenges here. We can have pain, and we're going to face terrible questions of loss and does God care? Why? Because we broke the world. This sin broke the world. We did it. So these questions arise because we are imperfect people, and this is the result of that. It's painful and it's harsh, but yet that's the reality we deal with. So when the questions come up, we can continue in sin and say, it's your fault, God. Or we can say, God, I need you now. And I trust you now, and I don't understand. Read any psalm. Half of them, that's David saying, I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense, but I know you are good. I'm going to trust you in it. But even pain aside, even in the best of times, how do you react to what's going on around you? And the picture is always the same. You find where God is at work, and you join him there. Our mind is sit back, wait for God to show up. Come on, God. Show me what you want. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you want me to do. Just take care of me. I'm hurting, or it's great, and so I just want to be here in your presence. Well, here's the funny thing of Jesus. He kept moving on. He kept going from one place to another. He kept leading people on. And somebody would come up and say, I'll follow you. And says, you're following me where? Are you really going to follow me? Because you don't know where I'm going yet. Another would say, I'll follow you on this time frame. And he says, I'm on a different time frame. Come on, let's go. Disciples followed him in their big, massive storms that threatened their lives. This is all one continuous story that all these take place. Another one says, I'll follow you because you just healed me of all these demons. He says, no. Go tell everybody about it. He's always moving. And so where do you want to be in God's presence? Where he is, because he keeps going out and working. And we think we should just sit back and come together, and he's here with us, and that'll be enough. And he sits with us, and it's enough. And then he says, all right, let's go. Let's go over here. See this work that's going on over here. Come over here and see this work that's going on. Come over here and let me show you this. Come over here and be a part of this. Come over here and see this magnificence. Because God is at work. And whether our questions are painful or our questions are rejoicing, he's saying, come on, I want to show you the answers. Let me show you what I'm doing. Let you be a part of it. See, where I am, that comes through in some small ways. Like if you follow my prayer texting that we sent out, some of you get those, or you get our newsletter. You know that one of our guys used to live under a bridge just a year ago. Under a bridge, did everything you expected of somebody living under a bridge, lived a miserable life. The other day, he got word that he's got his own place finally. He's been living with somebody else. He's been clean since that time. He hasn't touched any of the junk. At times, I even wondered, I suspected some of the things I saw, I thought, maybe he's selling now. And then something happened and refuted that idea, and I was so excited for him because, like, this is legitimate. God is changing his life. And he got an apartment the other day. He moves in Wednesday. And we don't have really much of anything. Some of you know, because each month we're dependent that God's going to show up in some way to fill the bills, because we don't have enough to fill the bills. Jetty keeps paying those bills. So we don't go out and just blow money and say, here, we'll just buy you all this stuff. And yet we depend on God. Okay, God, here's an opportunity. Let's show him your blessing. And by the way, getting the place, he gave glory to God, saying, God's provided me this place. And then sitting in my in-laws' driveway is our church's trailer with a recliner chair for him, a bed frame for him, a dresser that will match the set there, and some glasses we had picked up. And we have those to bring down. And then we have Thursday where we do another work and get to be a part of what God's doing in another community. Somebody just was standing there and said, hey, one of the ladies ministering said, hey, I have a twin bed. Do you know anybody who needs a twin bed? It's like, well, we have a frame. And yeah, we need a bed. And then we have another church with a ministry that has stuff. And I reached out and said, hey, can we pick up some stuff that he needs because he has this place? And they said, yeah, we'll help him out with some of these things. We have this opportunity to minister to a guy and providing all these things when we have nothing. Why? Because we're looking for where God's active. And we say, we want to be a part of it. Does it look good on us? Who cares? It looks good for God's glory, and that's what we're after. And so in this one life, God is being glorified because we joined in with what he's doing. We have another lady, one we've been friends with. Again, you've heard some of her stories. She's been without a job, struggling. And we didn't get to take a direct role in this one. She walked into a store for food with a friend and was offered a job, and on the spot took the job. No interview, no anything. It was just a great interaction just around the block. And what did she say? She said, well, look what I did. I just walked in, got lucky. No, she said, God set this up. It was amazing. We've been ministering to her. We've been praying with her, and you've been praying for her. And what happens? She walks in the door, and a job is offered to her by a man who's a Christian, no less, who said, this must be a God thing. And she says, I know it is. Because we just join in and where God is at work. Bigger things. You've heard, if you've followed, you've heard about our block parties that terrify me. Because the last one we had like 30-fold people attending than we had help. But it went well. We saw a community. It's outside of our focus area. But God opened up doors. We started getting involved. We saw God at work. We continue to be involved. I'm convinced in the near future, that's going to be another church. We're still wondering, how are we going to be a church that's able to stand on its own someday? And yet, here we are, able to start another church. Why? Because we want to see where God is involved. Does it make sense? Most of the time, no. It confounds all wisdom. Dave Ramsey would be horrified about some of the things I'm doing. But I want to be where God is and what he's doing. And so when these questions come up and these pains come up and these struggles come up, I can say, but God is doing, and so I can stay right here. Or now he's over here, or wherever he is. I want to be where God is involved. I don't know where anybody is in here regarding the pain side, or the struggle side, or the uncertainty side. But I do know that everybody in here needs to address that same question. Ask, where is God at work today? Because that's where I need to be. Jason, you understand, I have a set schedule. I got to be here 8 o'clock every day. Yeah, that doesn't mean God isn't at work somewhere in there. And that you aren't praying for God to reveal it to you so you can be a part of it. That's true, but I work by myself and these things happen or whatever, but so I just go home each day. What do you do on your way home each day? Are you looking for where God is involved? Or in the evening as you get home and with your family? Or in the community, the neighbors, the activities that you take part in? All of these are places we think the church hasn't told me what God is doing yet. I'm waiting for it to tell me what's our next activity so I know where to be involved. Because that's where God's going to be, right? He doesn't do anything outside of what the church is doing. Right? You know why a church exists? Because the people went out to where God was active and working. They were faithful. They made disciples. Those disciples come together, and the church grows. He never said, go out and build a church, then go out and grow the church, and go out and grow it more, and then go out and make other churches. He said, go and make disciples. I will build my church. So that's my challenge to you. That's what I leave you with. Are you willing to pray that this week, each day, and respond to it? God, what are you doing today? I want to be a part of it. That sounds easy. It's the joining in and doing it that gets to be tough at times. Because that means not sitting down and waiting for God to do, but letting him show you and then going to it. Jumping in both feet. God, I want to be involved. There it is. God, that's not what I was expecting. Maybe we could do something over here. That's where I am. That's where I've led you. Hey. That's all where I want to be. Whatever you're facing, difficulties, joys, uncertainties, ask this question. Jump in feet first. And let him handle the struggles. Let him fight your fights. You be where he is. Don't wait for him to come. He will. He'll hold you. But he's trying to get you out to join with him. So that's going to be in our invitation too. How do you respond to God? You just go back into the week? Or do you look at what he's doing in his stories, the history he's showed us, and let that change your week this week? Let that change my week this week. I keep that question on my mirror every day to keep myself focused every day, looking for what God is doing. That's the only thing I can do. I'm not going to believe the lie that I have some innate ability of my own to overcome. He is the one to overcome. So if you know God's presence, his truth, there's the question. But maybe you need to back up a little bit and say, I've never been anywhere where God is involved. I've never even known God involved in my own life. What are you talking about? Stairs there. That's the cross. He came into this world to struggle like us. Who would do that? Someone who wants us restored to him. And the only way that was going to happen is somebody had to fix the brokenness of the world. And the only way that brokenness was fixed is through the penalty of death that Jesus suffered. And the only way we could have hope even from that is the resurrection that showed I have control over life. Why would you just follow Jesus wherever he's going and be involved in that? Because I know he has control over all of life. That whatever I face, I know he has it in his hand with certainty. I may have uncertainty, but he has me, and that's enough. Because what I face is always going to be overcome by him. That's why people could go and face death holding their head high, not because of their pride of themselves, because of their certainty in God. So if I can face death, I can surely face some circumstances, some questions, some uncertainties, some struggles, some conflict, some joys, some provisions, some friends together. Because following God isn't just the nightmare of things, it's the joy of things that overcomes these nightmares of the world. So the invitation is yours. Do with it what you like. Stand before God, ask him, God, where are you at work? Will you show me this week, today, each day? You lead me to do it. I don't know if I can take that step. Would you show me? But I'm willing to try. Good. That's the step. Father, we give you this time. Here we are, two opposite sides of the state. One Cincinnati, one outside Huntington. The same God we pray to. People in this room have traveled to Israel, to Dominican Republic, China. Places here I would be surprised at probably. And all the while, it's the same God at work. You have allowed us to know you in your presence. You've allowed us to live in your grace, to know your mercy, to see your love, to experience it, to be reassured by it each day. God, we desire to know you. We desire to be with you. And yes, we struggle because sometimes we don't know how to follow. Thank you that you let us follow. You'll show us the steps. God, I pray that we can ask each day this week, where are you at work? So that we can join you there and take part in something as incredible as 5,000 men struggling with a question of what's God doing now. See God provide an answer in the greatest of clarity. Maybe you're not going to part waters for us this week and we'll walk across the Ohio River. Maybe you're not going to just show up food to feed 5,000 people out of near nothing. I don't know what your next miracle is, but I know you are the same God doing the same incredible works. I want to see it. I want to be a part of that. God, I ask you, show me. And I hope each person here will ask the same question. Let me be a part of your work. We give this time to you to respond however you lead our hearts as we sing your praises. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Stand and sing. If you need to speak, I'm up here. Don's here. You know your deacons. You just need to worship. Let it be from your heart, not just habitual.
We're about to take up our tithes and offerings, so if you need prayer for that in any way, please feel free to do so now. And also want to take on and thank those who have already given online or through the app. Have you ever given really great advice but worded it really terribly? There was a popular news channel that gave a couple of tips to help not forget your child in the back of your car. You know, heats are rising, leaving anything in the car is a dangerous time. And what they did was they took a list of popular mnemonics and just applied it to this. But they worded one part really interestingly. Their advice was, put something important like your phone or your wallet next to the child. Just something important by your child. Something important by your child. Great advice, because you carry your phone and your wallet, but that's not quite the word you should use. When I give this talk, I don't want to stress that money is as important as God, just like your phone or your wallet is nowhere near as important as your child. But your money is something you carry with you, and it's a good mnemonic to remember who God is and how important He is. So as our volunteers come forward, place something important next to God. Dear God, thank you. Thank you for the good times and the bad. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you that no matter what, through tough times or good, we can love you, and we know that you love us. Amen.